So I'm using brown pastel matte paper. Seemed to make sense because it's a general warm tone to the Jaguar. Okay, so could have used the mid-tone grey as well. Could have used the sienna. They all would have worked, but I really fancied using the brown. I thought that would be suitable. Now what I'm doing at the moment, because I'll backtrack in a second, what I'm doing at the moment is just putting in the indication of where the lights are going to be. Okay, so that's just helping me to visualize where they're going to be so I know I've got them in the right places. So on the pastel matte paper, what I did, I took my drawing, I put some transfer paper underneath it, put it on top of the pastel matte paper, and I just used a normal pen and just went over the top to transfer the drawing down. I didn't make the lines too dark. If you do them too dark, then the pastel will struggle to go over the surface. So if you've gone too dark, you can use a kneaded eraser to remove them a bit. But what I wanted to do in this instance anyway, remember I've got that technique where I put gouache, black gouache, just slightly watered down on the areas of dots and markings and where they're going to be very black. On this one, that's virtually everywhere, so I've gone over almost all of my lines anyway with gouache. And pastel sticks very well on top of gouache, so you won't then have any transfer problems. Okay, so that's what I've done. That's what the black markings are. I've just used a fairly cheap brush, round brush, nothing special about it at all. Put out some gouache. I use Winsor & Newton designer's gouache. It's just black, nothing else, doesn't need to be complicated at all. It's worth getting a tube of black and a tube of white, because I would sometimes do the white as well if I think I needed to. So the stage I'm doing now, you could use gouache white, and I then just let it dry. You can dry it with a hairdryer if you want, just to speed up that process, but that fixes the black dots, the spots in place, so now they're not going to smudge into anything else. Okay, so that's why I do it, and I think it's a real time-saving device. We will be going over the spots, as you'll see in the video, with pastel, so you won't see any of the gouache in the final drawing, but you know, you see how easy it is now for me to just go over this. They all stay in place, and as I said, it really speeds up the process. I thought with this one, why not do Panpastels for the underpainting again? Okay, it's very popular, Panpastels now. I've matched up the colour by mixing it on a bit of printer paper to the side. I've shown that now on lots and lots of videos, so I wanted to zoom in on this one to show you the actual Panpastel going on the surface of the paper, because when I zoom out a lot you don't get to see the detail of what I'm doing now. And look at how those spots are just staying in place. Remember, the Panpastel is not that opaque, and this shows that. Now I'm using that to my advantage, because if it was completely opaque and I was putting it down fairly heavily, you wouldn't see the spots, the markings. Okay, so Panpastels is really useful for doing this. It seems to have just the right amount of opacity, so we can see the markings underneath. And I'm using it quite sparingly as well. You see, I use some scrap pastel matte paper, the brown paper, put my little pastel Panpastel marks on there and match it up to see how accurate I am. Now, for some reason, beginners, novices, they really seem to skip these matching up stages. First thing they make a mistake with is not printing out the reference photo the same size as the drawing. Second is not getting the printout on good quality printer paper, so they use just normal inkjet paper, and if the printout, your reference photo, doesn't look as good as the drawing you want it to be, well, you're doing something wrong. You need to get better quality printout paper and get a better print. Okay, now don't forget, fold your reference up as well, offer it up to the drawing like I'm doing. That's something else people just miss out. See how close you are. Are you really close with the colors? We want it to go, you know, we're going to darken areas anyway, but I want it to be roughly right, the general color. I want it to be close to the general color. I'm just using magnets on my magnetic whiteboard to put the reference back there, but I wanted to show you even I do it. The more these steps you skip, the less likely you are to get accurate colors and accurate tones. So do that folding of the reference frequently, especially at the beginning stages when you're trying to get, you know, the general colors, the general tones, the lightness and the darkness. It makes a big difference. And from what I've seen when I'm doing critiques of people that are just jump in those stages, they're the ones that then get to the end of the drawing or the painting, because don't forget, I would attack these in just the same way if I was doing oils. They get to the end and then they wonder why they're not, their drawings and paintings are not accurate in colour or tone. There's no real reason by the time you get to the end why it shouldn't be accurate if you're testing the colours and that by folding all the way through. If you're working from an iPad, that'll be more difficult, or tablet, because you haven't got the printout. I really personally like to work from a printout if at all possible. So if you're not accurate at this stage, when you do the folding and you put it up there, you see it's not accurate. So you say to yourself, am I too light? Am I too dark? Does the colour need to be more orangey or more subdued? You know, ask these questions. It doesn't have to be perfect at this stage, but you want it fairly close. You don't want any real glaring differences. Now this part of the body, it's a critical part, this, because it's got to blur out gradually to go into the background to make this look photographic, and I want it to be very realistic in the end. So you want to get that blur going out gradually and not be one sharp transition from very sharp focus on the head to complete blur out on the body. We'll talk about that a lot more when I do it. I've also adjusted the shape of the body. You can see it's dropping down more rapidly than in the reference photo. That's just to get the ear up above the body. You can see in the reference it's on the same line. The tip of the ear is touching the edge of the body, and you don't want things doing things like that because it causes a visual kind of disturbance there. You don't want edges touching edges, just like I haven't got the edge of the body touching the edge. The top edge of the body is not touching the top edge of the frame area, and I'm going to actually put the background above that further. Okay, you see when I put the background in, I'll go way above that area, because once again, you don't want things touching edges when it's going to be framed. You either want it to go outside the edge or stay inside the edge. Okay, so that's another tip when you're framing. Keep in mind when you're doing your crop for your drawing, you're going to have a mount board that's probably going to come over, probably 5mm all the way around, 5mm. So you want to keep that in mind. You don't want edges touching the mount board edges. Once again, it'll just look strange and won't read right for the customer or the viewer. So I've just darkened down my Panpastels. I did a bit of a darker brown in there. So you can see my colours are not exactly accurate. Remember, there's a bit of a difference between the printout and what you're seeing on screen with my drawing. The different mediums, they seem to reflect and look a little bit different on screen, but don't worry about that. Just concentrate on the technique I'm using, not putting much pastel down, and just squinting when I'm looking at the reference. Now, if squinting hurts your eyes, just blur the reference in your image editor at this stage, and then once you've got your initial blocking in, this blocking in done, then swap it over and put your sharp focus reference photo there instead. So I'm just going to carry on now with this blocking in. The whole drawing took me about 10 hours to do, so it's going to span over a few videos, and obviously I'll have to speed up areas that's a bit more repetitive. Now with the darkness of the background and the darkness of the body, I want them to blend together and recede into the background together. So I'm creating a blurred line there. You can't see really the edge of where the body will be. And due to the fact that I cropped it tight like this, remember we showed at the beginning, that all looked a bit strange in the crop if you could see the body there. You just, because it's curving around, you couldn't tell if it was this Jaguar's body or perhaps another one walking behind. So don't be afraid to adjust the reference. If you feel it looks strange to you, it generally has got a problem, so alter it at the early stages. I'm just going to put in a dark background. Remember I said that the Panpastels are not that opaque. To get them more opaque, you can just keep layering on top, but what I normally do is use pastel sticks then, because they are very opaque, to go on top of this. Okay, so I'm just mapping in now some greens, some blacks, just creating a dark background. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do with the Panpastels. Creates a great underlayer, and now I can start adding the details on top of that. So the Panpastels really save a lot of time. The full lesson is over 3 hours long. You get to see me actually do the drawing, build the layers up on top, finishing all the fine details as well. That's on my $18 tier on my Patreon art channel, and you get access to hundreds of hours of other videos as well, all in that price. Just wanted to quickly mention my Patreon channel for those looking for even more in-depth art instruction. It's packed full of pastel videos, oil videos as well, and those videos are being added to new ones every single month. I have videos for the complete beginner that have never done pastels or oils before with just limited supplies, and I take you from the very first blocking in all the way through to the final detailed drawings and paintings. I've also got some really unusual subjects as well, and in all of my videos I always take you through all the details. You see everything I do, how I create my work. But it's not just for beginners, it's also for novices, and I also show the best artwork that I've ever done as well. And this particular elephant video spans 6 hours, so you know you're going to see tons and tons of details, tips and techniques. And as mentioned, I've got lots of oil videos on there too, so there really is something for everybody, and you get access to hundreds of hours worth of videos for just $4. Now over 1,000 members strong. Hope to see you there soon.